now. Hey, and there we go. We are live. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel. I am overjoyed here today to have a phenomenal guest, Kate Elliott. You can see many of her books around me. You're probably used to, if you've seen my channel before, me harping about Crown of Stars and trying to get everybody to read it, as well as she's got a really wide body of work, which we'll talk a bit about here as well. But I'm sure people don't really want to hear me talk as much here. They probably want to hear from you. So I'll let you, if you want to give an introduction, Kate. Thanks so much again for joining.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm going to say this over and over again because I actually really hate talking about myself. One of the reasons I like writing is that it's something I do by myself at my desk. Then I work with an editor, and then the other people at the publishing house. But I don't have to like write in public or and I don't have to talk about myself because it's my books. I'm not here to like, hi, I'm me. I'm a celebrity. I have like no interest in that. I just like my books to do the talking for me. But I will say, because I've learned that I have to say it, is that I've been writing for a long time. I started writing as a child, like some people do. I drew maps and I drew large underground complexes. I don't know why. I started reading science fiction fantasy at an early age. I grew up in rural Oregon, and it was actually a pretty good place to grow up because I was an outdoor kid. So I liked being outdoors, and it was a great place to be outdoors. But it was also kind of boring. And I always kind of wanted to like find that portal that would allow me to enter another world. And I think that's part of where writing came from for me. Then if I wrote stories, then it was kind of like a portal. It wasn't quite what I really wanted, but which I couldn't quite get because we haven't found any of those portals yet that I know of. And if anybody has found them, yes. And if anyone has found them and has not told you and me, then they are like, bad on them. So I think that's one of the reasons I started writing, and I like writing. I like making up worlds. I like making up stories and characters. And then eventually, after doing that for a long time, which people often do, I had written multiple novels. My early books were bad, and that's fine. They were bad in the sense that they weren't really publishable, but they weren't bad. This is something that I would say to especially early stage writers. Everything you write is worth something. It all helps you along the way. It's all that experience builds up and allows you to kind of keep moving along. And but eventually I did get published. My first novel came out in December 1988, it's a pretty long time ago now. Startlingly long ago.
Not that long. No.
Well, I mean, it could have been 1888. Although I would be very well preserved if that was the case.
True.
Yeah, and then I have literally just kept writing ever since. I feel very fortunate to have the career I've had. As everything I've written has been science fiction and fantasy, but I've written in a very wide range of subgenres because I'm not one who would like write 30 volumes of a mystery series. And I think it's great that people can do that. I'm not the person to do that. I like to kind of range a field and see, well, let me try something with this vibe, and let me try something that does this other thing. All within that kind of umbrella of science fiction fantasy. And that's where you find me today. So I'm still writing science fiction fantasy.
Yeah, when you do really have such a wide variety, because you have some more like kind of like classical style fantasy, you've got like more modern fantasy, you have kind of the mix with like some of your novellas, you've got your space opera series, you have the Duran books, which are a different kind of sci-fi and everything too. So you have a ton of stuff, and you don't always get that. So that's where it's really interesting, especially reading authors' body of work, which I still have a fair few of yours to get to still, but reading an author's body of work who really has all kinds of different stuff here too. So
I do think that there's a kind. Well, I think there's a kind of I think there is a Kate Elliott novel. I think that like most writers, I have certain themes and subjects that interest me that I keep kind of like, let's look at it from this angle. Let's look at it from that angle. So for example, I just am really fascinated by empire. I think because I grew up in the US, I still live in the US, and the United States is, by every measure, an empire. And that interests me. Without going into the good, the bad, the ugly, and all that. I mean, just so I have books that focus on an empire builder. I have books that focus on pulling apart empires. I have it, I just there's I have the empire builder is the good guy, the empire builder is the bad guy. I mean, there's just so many facets of just that. And then there's other subjects too that I think keep recurring in what I write because I never get tired of examining them. So I think that's one reason that I like all the different genres, because they allow me a lot of freedom to not repeat myself.
Yeah. So that like we were just talking before too, that like I find whenever I have like planned questions, we always just kind of transition to them anyway. So and that's the first one because you mentioned some things that you explore over and again. And one thing that I found really fascinating that you tend to include in all of your books that I've read is just kind of the mundane everyday
Yep.
things and like the
Yeah.
the realism elements. And I'm just curious on that because from with Crown of Stars just feeling like one of, if not the most realistic medieval kind of settings that I've read, because you have so much of that, to in the new book The Witch Roads too, where it's just the basic everyday things you deal with traveling, and like those things included, it makes it feel so real for me. So is that something that you really intentionally focus on? Does that just sort of happen?
No, that's, well, I mean, both things can be true at the same time. I grew up at a time when this is a little complicated to explain. There were a lot more, well, I mean, we live in a complicated world regardless, right? But when I was a girl, there were a lot more obvious, understood societal strictures about what girls wanted to do and what they didn't want to do. And then there was also a lot of a focus on important things versus unimportant things. Things that are worthy of story, things that are too trivial to be in stories. And as I was a teenager, when I had to go through a whole mental consideration of, well, why do I want to do the things that society says are things that boys do and boys want to do, but girls want to do these other things, but I don't want to do those things. I want to do these things. What does that mean? So I wrestled with that in junior high and high school, or what we called it junior high then. It's middle school now in the U.S. And then through college and into my 20s, I began to read more what was then called women's history. And I began to see how that split was, well, who says these things aren't important? If no one's cooking, what are people going to eat? If no one's cleaning, how can people live? Why are those lives considered to be less important than the other lives? Who makes that decision? Who makes that choice? Who says so? And why do they say so? And so I guess the word I like is I began to interrogate that, and it began to bug me. And I think that's when I started. I see it especially with Geron, which is my my fifth published novel. From Geron forward, I began to purposefully say, I'm going to treat. Well, hold on. Let me back up a little bit. But Geron is a science fiction novel, although it's not the same. It's not space opera like the Sun Chronicles are. But I specifically said, I'm going to treat one of the, I don't, this is so hard to explain.
Oh, you're doing a great job.
I'm not an idea driven writer. I'm a world and character driven writer. So it's like I have characters in worlds, and then the plot to me kind of comes out of whatever that relationship and conflicts between the characters and the worlds and cultures, right? So, and then I usually have something I'm thinking about at the top of my head that I know I want to put in the book. And then there's always something that after I've written the first draft, I go, oh, wait, this is also about that, which I hadn't intended. So who knows, right? That's why I love the process. But anyway, with Duran, I specifically wanted to write a story in which there the focused society, the society we spend time in, is in one in which women's work, so often denigrated, and still in some cases, not as much as when I was younger or in different ways, right? But in which women's work is considered central, and in which women's authority, even though they're mostly, not completely, but mostly living living a fairly traditional lives within their society, or what we would call traditional lives, because it's not the modern world. There, people are doing different things. But what if
Mhm.
women's work and women's authority was genuinely, seriously considered as important? What would that society look like? So that was kind of one of the drivers. And so I would say that that is the first of, that's where it kind of really got embedded in my writing. And then I never could let go of it after that. Because once I found that, once I started down that road of saying, what is all this? Who are all these everyday people who wander through as spear carriers? Why are they not, why do they not matter? Because they do matter. They matter to themselves. They might not matter to this story. And kind of one of my, I guess, mantras, if you will, became, if I have to interact with someone in a story, if one of my main characters has to interact with a very minor character in a story, I want there to be a momentary sense that the camera could go off the main character and follow
Mm.
that other character, and they would have a life that meant something.
I
So
love that.
even, yeah, so even if we only have an exchange of, one page or a half a page exchange, I want that sense that they're a real person. They're not just there in support of the main character.
I love that so much, and I feel like a lot of that too just hits the nail on the head. Why I'm such a fan of your works, because I am such a world building focused reader, and it's something I've said a
Yeah.
ton of times. That's like the number one thing for a series to really become a favorite for me. So much has to do with that. And you could have a great story that's more plot driven or character driven and everything too, but world building, it's one of the reasons I love fantasy, and it's one of the
Yeah.
reasons I've been such a
Yeah.
fan, because it's, you always just feel that focus. And that's, I really can appreciate that is such a choice and something you look at, because that's just something I've really really noticed in your books, is you focus a lot on the world building, but it's not just the big stuff. You really
Right.
expand as you
Right.
go along here too. And yeah, that's one of the things I've been most fascinated to talk with you about, is that approach. And so with that, with looking at like that level, how differently do you have to approach that when you're looking at like one of your a long series, or like with the Witch Roads duology right now, where it's just the two books? Is your approach different with how you try to put that in?
Not really. I mean, the world exists, I like to say, regardless of me. Which is, in the sense that if I'm going to create a world, I want it to feel like a place you could live in, a place you could go, because that's what I loved about reading, and what I still love about reading. I love getting immersed in a story and feeling like there is some way in which this place could exist. Whether or not it does doesn't matter, but it could. And so I always want to, I mean, that's one of my biggest goals as a writer. I want to create a place that you feel like for an instant that you are actually walking through. And if I accomplish that, then I'm happy. Whatever else, I'm happy. So when, you sometimes people write these big world building books, but the world building is all on that very top level, where all the factional politics among the court of the king, or, maybe some technology stuff. Maybe someone will write about how you make a sword, or, Tom Clancy describing guns in great detail. But I always, but sometimes I read a book like that and I think, where are they getting their food? Because I grew up in rural Oregon. I grew up in farm country, right? Where are they getting their food? I don't think so. I don't think in this desert city with no water sources, they're feeding 100,000 people. Yeah, and I just lose my sense of disbelief. So I think to some extent, having grown up in farm country, where, your things are growing and the dirt is there, and, there's cows and sheep, and that kind of grounds you a little bit in ways that maybe people who didn't grow up in that setting might not notice, because they just say go to the grocery store. So maybe to some extent just agriculture is my baseline. Maybe it all stems from agriculture. I don't know.
Hey.
uh
Well, you were born in Des Moines, right? I think I read.
I was, but we only
I know.
lived
I
there a few
said
years.
from
Yeah.
Oregon. Yeah. Okay. I
Yeah,
said
but
because
I
I'm
grew up in
actually
Oregon. Are you in Des
yeah
Moines?
yeah.
Are
I
you
live in
in
Des
Des
Moines,
Moines?
so
You're
yeah,
in Des Moines? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I
yeah.
was born in Des Moines. I lived there. We left when I was 5. Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
my
I
early.
yeah,
Do
I
you
was
know where?
actually
Okay, so
born
do you know
in.
where? Go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Go
go,
ahead.
go ahead. Now I'm curious.
No, but Do you know Grandview College?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my dad taught there for 5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like 10, 15 minutes from where I live. So I know right
Yeah.
where that is. That's so
I'm
cool.
sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead. What were you gonna say? Yeah.
Oh, so I went like the opposite because I was born actually in San Diego
Hmm.
because my dad was stationed there in the Navy, and then when I was 9, we moved to a town of like 3,000 people in Iowa, and
Uh,
then I went to college in Des Moines, and then have been back in Des Moines for about 5 years now. So I always think that's funny just because I know you didn't like live here long, but I'm just like, oh, it's just funny seeing somebody who's actually born around here. So
it is funny. It's also funny that your dad was in the Navy, because one of my sons is in the Navy right now. Yeah.
oh, okay,
So,
yeah,
and my dad was in the Navy. So, that's pretty
yeah,
cool.
it's
Cool.
very cool.
Well, too old. Yeah, I always say I was born in Des Moines because I was. And I
Hey,
have
yeah.
all my earliest memories, my very vague early. I'm not one of those people who remembers everything from the age of 2 and on, but all my vague early memories are from Des Moines. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is still, yeah, it's still pretty cool. So it's just kind of, I don't know, a small world sometimes with
Yeah.
some of those
Yeah.
things. But
Yeah.
I found that funny. I meant to bring that up before and I completely forgot. And so that's where I'm like, I figured
But
I'd mention.
we came around to it.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. So, and I know you said you don't like talking about yourself a ton, but I had to ask about the other my favorite fun factoid as I was like looking up some other stuff for you in preparation for this is that not only did you used to practice actual sword fighting, but you met your husband sword fighting, and
No,
I would.
I'm no longer married, but which is fine. But yeah, we
Oh,
did
I'm
meet in
sorry.
a sword fight. It's okay. It's all right. Life goes on. But we did meet in a sword fight. Yeah. So that's pretty funny.
And this is why I know you have a quote about Wikipedia being only the beginning, and that you need to source things better than that. So, uh,
Yeah, I need
uh,
to find someone to update that. That's all right though. I have a Wikipedia entry, although my kids say that they can tell I don't is TV one of my sons, a Navy son, actually said, "Mom, you've made it. You're on TV tropes."
oh, that's fun. I
Oh
was
yeah,
gonna
I
say
have
I
a
don't know
really
who creates those, but yeah, it's always interesting seeing what's on there.
I don't know. It's been years since I checked, but the TV tropes entry for Crown of Stars is hysterical. It's very accurate, but really funny.
I've probably seen it, but now I'm gonna have to look it back up again after this. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
boy. That would have been a good way
Well,
to solve things.
I can't speak to that. I have an NDA.
Oh gosh. Oh, that's too funny. That's too funny. Uh, oh my goodness. So, well, since we're talking about places and locations and whatnot, I know you've done a lot of traveling. Do you have like a favorite place you've seen or a place that was most inspirational for your book? Since I know setting is really important with like your surroundings and where you've gone. I know with a lot of your books as well.
I don't really have a favorite place I've ever been. I think I'm one of those people who. So listen, if I had made it through that portal, and made it into Middle Earth like I really wanted to, I would totally have become a ranger. Right? That
Mm.
was like always like that was my thing. Like, I mean, I would have had to dealt with this inherent sexism of Tolkien's Middle Earth, and I love Tolkien. He's like my main whatever, right? But he also wrote Eowyn, so and Galadriel. So anyway, I love him. And so, but anyway, yeah, I would have been a ranger. So I love traveling. I think the world is incredible. There's so many amazing places. So I don't really have a favorite place. I love the farm I grew up in Oregon, because that's kind of, I feel very rooted there. I love Hawaii, which has, where I live now, which has this incredibly, it's kind of hard to describe. Hawaii has this very spiritual place in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I'm very much a water person, so I love being by the ocean. I mean, I'm not on the beach. My house isn't on the beach, but you know, I can get in there. I can go to the ocean easily every
Yeah.
day, you know, and I'm in the ocean like three times a week. But but there are, I mean, there's certain things. For example, the Geron books are very influenced by the fact that when I was a high school, after my junior year in high school, I went to a summer science program in Laramie, Wyoming. So that landscape is very influenced by the way Wyoming looks. So it's supposed to be like a Central Asian steppe, but I hadn't been to a Central Asian steppe, you know, but Wyoming is plains. So
That's
that was
true.
kind of the Wyoming. So it's kind of, a lot of that is that sense of the sky and the way the land goes on. That's Wyoming. I think of it, you know, adapted for the story. Um, I would say that the other thing is I love archaeology, and I love archaeological sites and ruins. They're like the best. The most I've seen a lot of, I'm very fortunate. I've seen a lot of amazing things. But I gotta say, possibly the single most large scale archaeological site I've ever been to is what I'll call the Angkor complex, which in Cambodia, which is a series of, it's this very large area where over several hundred years, each different king would build his own palace out of um, wood, temples out of stone, and then the city out of wood. So usually the palaces in the city are gone now because it's jungle
Mm.
and they would have been eaten away, but the temples are left. So you have across this vast area this phenomenal number of, some fairly intact and some pretty ruined, um, temples and buildings from, and what's so interesting is that they're across this chronological time, right? So that they start, I'm bad at dates, but that's why I have books, because I can look them up, right? So, you know, let's say the first one was 1050 and the last one was 1450. And I was fortunate enough to go there in 2009 and was there a week. And because I'd wanted to go for so long, we hired, we didn't stay at a multinational hotel. Sorry, this trip was amazing. We stayed at a little local hotel, and through them we hired a driver, because I said I really want to see as much as possible. And if you just go as a tourist, they'll take you to Angkor Wat, which is incredible, but they'll take you to Angkor Wat and Ta Prohm and um, the one with the Buddha faces. Sorry, my brain is my brain has too much stuff in it from the novel I'm currently working on. But we
Ooh.
hired a driver, and I had found this tour book that at the back had possible itineraries. And one of them was like a 5-day itinerary where you started with the earliest stuff. And then you went you know, you'd say, okay, if you could go to this place, this was the first one. This was the one built in 1050. And then, you know, and then the next day you would go to the ones built in the 1100s and then the 1200s. And then you would get to the, like Angkor Wat is one of the later ones. You would get to that later. And so you could see the changes in stylistic changes and
Oh,
what
that's
was,
fascinating.
it was, yeah. So the poor driver, the thing is, this is not a small area. It's a huge area. So we're talking maybe, you know, 45 minutes this way and then an hour and a half, you know, an hour back that way and then 30 minutes that way, as opposed to doing, you know, or you can go on a loop or you just drop it everything. And I think the second day when he came to pick us up, he says, "Well, don't you just want to do this? This is what people recommend." And I said, "No, no." And I had explained it to him. And then we just made sure to tip him really well because it cost him extra gas, right? So we just made sure to tip that guy really well. But the sheer scale of this area where this, again, it's an empire, right? It's the Khmer
Mhm.
Empire that lasted several hundred years, reached all the way into Thailand and Burma. In Thailand, they have, hundreds and hundreds of miles from from the central area. You can find from that era temples that have the Khmer architectural and decorative elements in them because that's how far the influence reached because it was an empire. But at the same time, I'm sorry, I'm so geeky about this stuff. It's
No, it's
incredible to me.
fascinating stuff. Yeah.
At the same time, so here we are in Cambodia in the 11, 12, 1300s. And the Khmer people had this incredible tradition of sculpture and carving. I've never seen anything so just unbelievably skilled and evocative and impressive. And some of it is like very much, there. So you see the Buddha comes in later as Buddhism kind of expands there. And early on and throughout, you get carvings of all these stories like the Ramayana and these stories that came from India. Because at that time, the kind of multinational, this is a bad analogy, but we think about the US, it's going to change now. It's changing now very quickly because with the explosion of K-pop and Chinese and Korean and Japanese historical dramas and stuff. But there was a period of time when the stuff coming out of the US, everyone knew who Michael Jordan was. Everyone was listening to, music out of LA. US films were seen everywhere. And it's kind of like India at that time. So like that was like it. It's everywhere all over Southeast Asia at that time. So it's not in Thailand, it still is, right? It's still very much a part of the culture. But that's like this origin of the cycle of tales and the I don't know, we call it mythology, but that's not quite the right word. That's I would call that kind of a colonial word, right? That it diffused outward. They were like the multinational cultural, big guns of that time, that it diffused so far all into India. Buddhism the same. It moves out across all these roads. How amazing is that? I don't know. This is why I world build so much, because I'm just
Yeah,
blown
no,
away
it
by
makes a
these
lot of
things.
sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Just
that's really
all the
fascinating
movement.
stuff.
Yeah, I could go on for hours and I won't. Yeah,
Well, that's where it's just fun, hearing you talk about things you're really passionate about with, and
yeah, yeah,
there is so much really interesting stuff like that. I would love someday to get to travel and to see some of that stuff, but
yeah,
there are so many fascinating things, and that's why I love world building too. And
yeah,
it's fun with some of your stuff that uses some real world history and kind of adapts. So you get in some of that, and then it makes you curious, like, oh, I wonder what inspired this. So you look into topics
yeah.
more, and so it's always kind of fun when something like that makes you want to find out more about like what the source was too. So it's yeah, no, I can really appreciate it. And as yeah, I already said, I'm such a world building guy too that I'm really glad that you're that passionate about all of the world building stuff because I love it. So
Well, and the other thing is that history is great because I mean, nobody's making stuff out of whole cloth. There is no such thing as stuff people are making up from nothing. We're making up stories and worlds out of what's in here. I mean, that's our source, right? So there is no like null or default zone because it's all being filtered through us, through what we know. So what you know is going to affect what you write. That's simply inevitable. And I always feel like the more people know, the richer that world, their worlds can be. And I also feel like history is a great thing to, I mean, history is a great place to borrow from, because all this stuff happened. And it's not that, I mean, sometimes people write historical fiction. A lot of people write historical fiction because they want to examine through their own lens something that happened in the past that interests them. That's fantastic, right? Um, Other times you could say, hey, look at this interesting social structure. What if I took that social structure and found a way to fit it with this other thing going on, and then I could that now I'm building a world. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and that's the fun of fantasies. You can do all of that. You can
yeah,
take bits and
yes,
pieces of different
yeah,
cultures, different bits of history, and put it together and make something that's just
yeah.
new and fun. And so that's where it's yeah. That's I'm enjoying just talking about world building in general. Like I said, that's the most excited thing I was to talk about here. So definitely not disappointing. It's just yeah, it's there's so much really fun stuff, and it's with building out the worlds too. Because I will say too, for everybody who, if you're not as world building loving as we are, um, your books do tend to be also very deeply character focused as well. I would say
Yeah.
within the world, and you do a lot of that too. But that's you tend to really focus in, and with I've mostly read your stuff with like a bigger cast as well. But like
Mhm.
the Witch Roads is a little bit more closer focused on a
Yeah.
more core group as well. But what's your approach with characters and that kind of focus that you have?
I would say that my process starts usually with kind of a almost a visual sense of a place and a character. And then I don't sit down and say, oh, romanticy's popular right now, which it is. Uh, I don't sit down and say, oh, romanticy's popular now, mysteries are popular right now. I'm going to write this, and though I need a character and another character and a situation.
I remembered this from earlier. I had to pop that
The
back.
spicy
I
romance.
hope
Yeah.
not.
I'm not. Well, I listen. Listen. I so respect people who can write spicy romance. I can't. I'm not that writer. So there it is. Uh, but oh my God, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, anyway,
So
so I don't sit down and say, oh, I'm going to have this character and then I'm going to give them a backstory or whatever. Once I get that little germ or that little, often it's a visual thing that I'll see. And a lot of these books, like Crown of Stars, literally the genesis of it was me having in my mind this young man, really more of a youth, right? Um, Walking over, and you'll recognize this, walking on a path over along the ocean, with the ocean here, and he's walking on a path. He's delivering something to somebody on the other side, and this storm blows in off the sea, but it's obviously not a normal storm. And then he looks up, and a woman in battered armor is riding toward him. That's literally where that book started. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know anything about
mm,
the woman in the battered armor. I didn't know. I knew it was on the ocean and there was a path, but not a path big enough for a wagon. Um, and that he was coming from the place he lived, which was probably a village, and he was going to some place. That's all I knew. And so everything else grew out of that. And most of my stories grow out of that kind of a seed. So I think of the characters in the world growing together. And I'll get, well, like with the Witch Roads, I actually tried, I kind of like poked into that world and setting a couple of different times over like 3 years before Elle emerged and, walking along on her route. And it was like, that's it. I knew it was it. And I can't explain why. Maybe just something in me says, oh, I like this. better than I liked the other ones or the other options. I don't know. Um, and but for me, the character in the world, I can't like create a world and stick a character in it. I can't create a character and create a world to go around it. They belong to each other the same way we do, because we can't
Mm.
pull ourselves out from everything from when and where we were born, and to whom we were born. And then our entire lives lead us to this moment where our understanding of the world is based on our experiences and our background and our personalities and all these other factors. So any given one of us, even I have 3 siblings, right? We each live in the world. We have had very similar growing up, right? We all grew up in the same household, but we have very different personalities, and have different ways of seeing the world. So between the general and the specific, the individual and the community, a character isn't something you can create and then pop into a world, because the character, we grow out of our worlds. We're so interwoven with them. So that's where character comes from for me.
I love that the character focus still comes back to world building, which again, just like I feel like you're just, explaining why I love your books as much as I do with these. I'm like, it's all making sense. Like I did them too. But plus, I mean, you talked about my favorite character. I'm still upset that I was mispronouncing his name for a long time, because I did a after the audiobooks came out, I listened to them after having read, and I had always pronounced it Elaine, and I struggled to get myself to say Alan, and that's
Well,
always
it's
the struggle of
actually
first time.
It's actually, I usually say Elaine too, because that's what I would call the American English pronunciation. And Shiromi Arcerio did those books. She was fantastic. I asked her to do it with the French pronunciation. So it's something like Alain,
Ah,
but I can't do it. I don't speak French. I don't know those phonemes and things. So, but it's kind of, yeah. So I just said, oh,
I'm gonna
please do
take
it
that though.
correctly. Yeah. But I
I
can't
love
say his name right. I can't say his name the way they would have said it in the story. So I just translate it into American English.
fair enough. Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And he went on a whole journey. I mean, for me, once I start writing, for me, writing is part of the process. So by the time, I have to get like a certain amount of, the bread has to rise to a certain amount before you can bake it. That's not a great analogy, but I have to have a certain amount of stuff before I can really start writing a book. Like I can't just write with nothing. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't have everything. I don't like figure everything out and then write it. I figure stuff out as I write. So sometimes the journeys people make aren't maybe the ones I thought they were going to make at the very beginning, or maybe I didn't quite, it's interesting for me. The process of writing is also a process of discovery, which I really love. So I'll usually know kind of where I want things to end up, but it's a loose sense of ending up. It might be an emotion that I know, or it might be an actual endpoint. Who knows? But finding out how I'm getting there is like, cutting a path through the woods.
Yeah, it's always interesting hearing how different authors approach,
Yeah.
because I've talked to people who are like the really big planners and the people that
Mhm.
kind of just know moments, and so
Yeah.
it's always interesting, kind of just seeing where it ends up. I don't think I could ever actually sit down and write like a novel. Probably the longest I could get myself to actually buckle down would be a short story. But I've always been like, if an idea pops in, it just like rattles around for a while, and I'm like, I'm curious to just write and see where that goes. But then I lose focus very quickly. Uh,
But
I can
see,
never go.
you have other things you're good at, right?
Well, maybe, who knows? But
Maybe. That means there's
hopefully a
something,
thing or
right?
two.
Yeah, hopefully, right. So we all have things. I see people do stuff. My when I see people who can sew and who can like say, "Oh, look, I have this pattern. I'm going to adapt it and sew something." I'm like, "How did they do that?"
That
Right?
is Yeah, I could
Yeah.
never. I agree. I'm like, that is so impressive being able to see that. So I only got a couple. Oh, Grifton just here to cause trouble. And we got Andrew and Anitha. I'm so bad about actually reading the chat most of the time. So I just pop up the messages kind of as they go because I get distracted.
I tend to not read the chat because I can't dual task language, right? So I can like either do the conversation or I can read and answer chat, but I can't do both.
Yeah.
I think it's because I can't switch from speaking to writing back and forth like that so fast.
Yeah, that's fair. Well,
But
and that's where,
can.
I tend to get caught up in the conversation. And so on the Liam talking about, so historical fiction not feeling very historically, I can get that. And then Griffkin asking about the pronunciation of Paul, which I was pronouncing it Paul, but we'll let you.
I mean, isn't
roads?
The word Paul? Paul is like a pallbearer, right?
That's how I was reading it. So it's fantasy. It could be anything. So.
It could be anything, and there are every once in a while. I actually just had the conversation. There is an audiobook for Witch Road's coming, but it's going to be a little delayed. There he is, letting us all know. Finn, where are you? Finn, come here, buddy. Finn, excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Oh, are you going to stop now? All right.
We did chat before, and she warned me that her dog might show up and announce his presence very loudly. So
come here. He's coming over. He's got that hangdog look. Come here, buddy. Come here. No, come on. Don't you want to come up and say you don't want to, do you? No. Okay.
I think
I'm not going to make you. He doesn't want to say hello.
Let me know. I think your camera froze for me. I'm not sure if it's just me. Oh, it sounds like it might not be. Oh, okay.
Did it go back in?
Now I was just not seeing anything at all. There is definitely love for Finn in the chat here. Oh no. Okay. Okay. Well, at least it just wasn't me. So this is better at least than the time that I was hosting something and my internet went out and I ended up having yeah, it's always an adventure. So that was with Andrew, and he just took over my channel for a while. But yeah. So see now I'll look at the chat. So if anybody has some burning chat things they wanted to submit, other than Bernard Cornwell, oh, I love it. Fun times in the chat. But we'll hopefully be back here shortly. But if you guys, I'll do this as we'll plug the Witch Roads. A good time for it too. We've talked about it a little bit, but this is out on June 10th. Definitely check it out. It is a duology, and the second book, The Nameless Land, will be coming out this, I think, November. I think you can actually do pre-order both right now. I have my hardcover that'll be coming, but I have this beautiful ARC version here. But it's a duology. It's much shorter. It's very Kate Elliott. I feel like if you like the epic fantasy, the world building focus, you'll have a good time with it here. Oh, hey, there we are. So.
Okay, now I need to I have two things. I mean, I'm on twice, so I have an echo.
Oh, here, I think I can. I'll kick your other one out. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, perfect. I did the fail safe, which is leave. I didn't leave, but I said unplug and come back. So, yeah, okay.
Oh, let's see. It looks like it's Grift again saying he had similar things happen with dropping out or going on. So yeah, it's always fun. I joked I've had it happen where my internet went out when I was hosting and just left my guest there. But I took the opportunity and was just plugging the Witch Roads a bit for you. And talking about it. So I meant to talk about that more at the beginning too, but. Yeah, it's very. If any of the stuff that we've talked about sounds interesting to you, you like the world building, you like the focus, all these things, all of that stuff in this one. So I was so excited seeing that one come out, and I still have plenty of others to get to. But when I see the new adult epic fantasy Kate Elliott book, I was just like, yeah, sign me up immediately. So I really enjoyed it. I had such a great time with it, and I can't wait for The Nameless Land.
Well, it's coming soon. I'm so happy because it was actually written all in one one long 6-month period, which is not long really because it's a long book. But I wrote the whole story in one 6-month thing. And what's interesting is the last third, I left out a bunch of stuff that I said, like, I was getting really long. Do I have to have that in to get them where they're going? No, I guess not. I left it out. And then when I sold it to Lee Harris at Tor, he said, yeah, but this is really a duology. And I said, sure, I know where to cut it. And then I added in all the stuff that I had cut out. So but the best part is that it's done. It was all done and revised. It was sold together, revised together. So it's coming out really close together. There's no like year and a half wait for
Yeah,
it. It's like June, November.
that's
So
always nice.
yeah.
So yeah, I it's always great because I can be patient too, but when you have the next book coming out, it's like, hey, it's also later this year. That's always just kind of nice to get close together too. So, yeah, I'm very excited because the ending of this one, with no spoilers, anybody in the chat, but the ending, it feels so very complete. It almost feels like you legitimately could end it here. Like there would be so many questions, but like at the same time, I don't know, the way it ends, it was so satisfying. So it's definitely not like a cliffhanger, but I'm just like, I gotta know more about this world. And you included so many little hints and teases of other things in this world. Like, also not a spoiler, but we don't see any of them, but there are apparently people who ride giant spiders that just exist off in the periphery. And that's not even like a focus. That's just like, oh, this is just a thing that happens over there. And
There's
I love
just
that kind of
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
so disagree.
I was so one of the things about the ending that I had to do. So there's a whole level of things that isn't answered by the ending. But what happens, what I do when I reach a point like that, and I know it's going to be split, is I try to find one thing that has some kind of emotional closure. And there is one plot line that has emotional closure in the last chapter of The Witch Roads. So that you can kind of go, right?
I say it felt very satisfying. Yeah.
Yes. So as long as there's something there, you can leave other things unanswered, which it does. But if everything is unanswered, then I think it's hard. Then it's more of a like, oh my God, I don't have anything. It's just like, it's like lopping the book off, right in the middle. Like they just like cut a knife through the chapter, like halfway through, they cut a knife and then they split it on. But I think because there's a weight that as a writer, I want people to feel like they can have a moment. Okay, now I can take a little break, think about it, and then I'll be ready when the next one arrives.
Well, and I know we don't have a ton of time left, so I'll kind of lightning round some stuff because there's definitely some things I wanted to make sure to bring up first. Because I know you told me you had fun.
10:45. We still have time.
Oh, 40? Okay, cool. I was just I knew you had kind of a deadline, so
I do, but 10:45 I can go to 10:45.
Okay. All right, good to know because I have a feeling we'll
unless
go
everyone's
long on
like,
some
oh, please
answers.
stop.
No, I don't think you're gonna have to worry about that. So it's more so I'm like especially here. It's like we'll get chatting and go there. But I did want to ask about because I mentioned, and this is the short collection, which includes some short stories and essays. But it has one of my favorite essays that I reference a lot whenever the conversation of the male gaze comes up, and it's called "The Omniscient Breasts," which is a really just a name you're immediately like, what is this? It's just really fascinating because it's just talking about how you do tend to see a lot of books, especially fantasy books, written in the male gaze, whether or not it's a male or a female character. And just how kind of it's given me a lot more of an awareness with reading too, and it's something that I think about. So, and it's just incredibly entertainingly written. But I know you said you had a fun story about that one.
Well, I mean, in the essay itself, I talk about where my realization came from. So for those who haven't read the essay, I talk about there is I don't know, like a scholarly whole apparatus and discussion of this thing called the male gaze. So we see things through the eyes of men, whether or not they're men or women. We see things in a certain way. So when it's most commonly seen in depictions of women. So we see women as sexual objects, as if the men are, as if the reader is desiring them, whoever the reader may be, whether the reader's a man or a woman, whether they're, LGBTQ, it doesn't matter. We always see it through this one specific, straight male gaze, right? Even because that's such a default in our society. And sometimes people use it when they don't realize they're using it. And sometimes it's just kind of creepy. A lot of times it's actually creepy. But I did early on. In one of the early Crown of Stars books I got back when people sent either email or before social media or actual letters, right? But someone emailed me and said, oh, no. It was early Amazon. Oh, I did something you're never, ever, ever supposed to do. Someone reviewed, I'm going to say Burning Stone, I don't know, and said, this book has a gay agenda because, and I was, so you shouldn't read it. And I thought, what is the gay agenda? I mean, I'm happy to have a gay agenda, but what does this person mean? So I emailed them and said, what do you mean by this? And then he was very like, oh, well, you just have a gay agenda, blah, blah, blah. And then it turned out, it took me a long time to figure it, a couple of exchanges before I finally realized that I was describing, especially Hugh, but also Sunglant and some of the other men, with a straight female gaze. Now, I describe other characters in other ways, right? Depending, because I try to do it according to the character. But the overall thing well, first of all, there's a whole reason. Oh my gosh. I have to get into this whole thing. So first of all, you have to understand that in the Middle Ages, especially the early Middle Ages, bishops and important churchmen were often described the way Hugh is described. I literally pulled some of that directly from sources. The bishop rode into town and the people gathered along the streets to exclaim at how beautiful he was. I am not kidding, because beauty was a sign of goodness and, God's favor or whatever. I don't know. Right. So that's where the whole, the outward seeming and the inner heart comes from, that whole thing that runs through the whole thing. Right. So, but I finally said, I'm not describing this from a man's point of view. I'm describing this, let's just say, from my point of view. I look at Hugh and I think, oh, he's a good looking man, even though he's the villain. Right. Or Sunglat, oh, he's a sexy guy. Right. And to his credit, he said, oh, you're right. And that's where that essay comes from, because I thought people just don't think about it. His assumption was that the narrative gaze, I'm only patient with people who I can see are actually grappling with things. Otherwise, I'm not patient. But yeah, I was patient because I was so curious. I was trying to figure it out. Yeah, so that's why I realized that people just don't realize that they're seeing society or gender roles or whatever through this very limited way. And so that's where the essay comes from. But the other funny thing that happened with that essay is that it was posted on the old SF Signal, which is now defunct and has even been, I think it's even gone, as far as I know, which is why the essay is not available online anymore and only in that book. And some guy pops up in the comments very angry about the essay, right? And the fact that it suggests that women might be human beings. And he said, well, he goes, well, well, this is all really stupid because women, almost all women in the Middle Ages were illiterate, pregnant peasant women who never walked farther than 5 miles from their house. And I thought, I'm like, what? So there's a story in that book. It's like Leaf and Grass, and I can't remember the title. Leaf and Grass. Anyway, as soon as I saw that comment, I said, I'm writing a story about an illiterate pregnant peasant woman who does something incredibly heroic that involves going farther than 5 miles from her house.
Okay.
In fact,
I love that.
She said it's in that also. So yeah, because imagine how attenuated, imagine how withered your imagination has to be, that's all you can see.
Yeah. Oh, it makes it even another funnier thing. But yeah, I used to reference it and link to that site all the time where it had it, and that's where I originally read this book from my library, but I'm like, I need to get a copy so that I at least can like reference and like talk about it and like quote it correctly if I'm quoting it. And so it was a fun time. But oh, Heidi, you have so much Hugh to get to. So she's just started King's Dragon. But
Oh, Heidi.
yeah, just you wait.
Yeah. Because you know what? Why do any of us do anything? And I guess what I would say about Crown of Stars, which half of which I don't even think I remember anymore, frankly. No, one time a couple years ago, I was looking up something for some reason. I don't remember why. So I grabbed In the Ruins, and it's like, I think that thing I want to reference in this essay is In the Ruins. And I opened the book. It fell open randomly to the beginning of chapter, I don't know, something 2/3 of the way through the book. And I read the opening page, and I said, and I'm like, I know all these characters, but I have zero memory of writing this. It was like
I had a lot since then.
It was as if I had fallen into a parallel universe where this chapter appeared in this parallel universe's version of Crown of Stars, but not in the original one. I don't know. So yeah, but one of the things I wanted to do with Crown of Stars was to show people as people. So I mean, I don't know any perfect people. And I know people who are wonderful, lovely people and even me, who do stupid things. And people who mostly do good things, or terrible people who might do one good thing. I mean, people are so complicated. And I just wanted to show people in all their messiness in that series.
Absolutely. Oh, and then we have women more empowered in the Middle Ages than some today.
That's absolutely,
sadly true.
Absolutely. No, it's well, and that's the other thing. People think of the Middle Ages as just like, here's the Middle Ages, and everybody was the same everywhere in the Middle Ages, and they did everything the same, except for the Middle Ages is just a term we use for like
a pretty big chunk of time,
like 700 years of time, and different regions, and it's so different. Also, those nuns were radical. Those nuns, not all of them, I'm sure, but those nuns, man, let me tell you, I did a lot of reading on Ottonian Germany. So that's like the 10th and 11th century Germany. And a lot of times the king would have a couple sisters, and one or two would marry people for alliances, and then one or two would go into the church, and they were like as powerful as lords. So because they would give oh my God, now I'm down my history geek place again. They would amass all these lands, and the king would consult with them, and they were learned. They were powerhouses there in Germany in that era, and in Anglo-Saxon England as well. I don't know so much about France or the southern areas.
Yeah, well, that's it's all of that extra history. Like I said, I do find it very fascinating. Oh, so here's a good question though: is there somebody people can get a signed copy of The Witch Roads?
Oh boy, you know what? I need to think about that. I'm not doing any signings at the moment. Let me. There's an indie bookstore in Honolulu, and I don't know why I haven't contacted them yet, but let me contact them and see if they're interested in me coming down and signing books, and then you could get it. They're called I'm going to type it in chat with everyone.
Yeah, and if you have a link later, let me know. I will add it to the description too.
Yeah, so if people wanted to write to them and say, hey, I hear Kate Elliott is local to you. Do you by any means? Oh, they're closed through. Oh, okay. They're reopening on tomorrow. Okay. So they're closed today.
Oh, gotcha.
There
is the shop.
Yeah, their website is closed until tomorrow.
Oh,
So,
gotcha. Okay.
but anyway, yeah, it's just, but yeah, I need to get, this is one reason. There's a lot of there's a lot of people who do indie publishing who do a great job with indie publishing, but for me, there's too many moving pieces. I can barely keep track of what I have to do. And this is one of the things that I've fallen down. So thank you for asking about signed copies. First of all, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm honored. Um, but yeah, I need to get on top of that. Oh my God. Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, definitely let us know. I'll update too, so that
Okay.
so you can check later, and I'll post around here. But just in case, by the way, in case you wondered if people liked all of the history comments, we have lots of support of all of the history chat. Kate's rabbit hole, that could be a podcast,
It
honestly,
could be.
probably.
It could be.
I say, yeah, Hawaii would probably not be the easiest for book tours too.
No,
So.
I signing itself isn't exhausting. But it's just setting things up and contacting people. It's more contacting people that's exhausting. I might be, I'm hoping to sign books at Powell's in the fall. And they usually, that's that big bookstore, the big indie bookstore in Oregon, in
Yeah.
Portland, Oregon. And if I manage to do that, then they always have me sign extra copies, and then they'll have extra copies for a while. But that wouldn't be till the fall, and I can't guarantee that's going to happen. But hopefully that'll happen.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But I'll try to find out something for sooner, because I actually have had some email as well, and now I feel guilty. And
Okay.
I'm a bad author. I'm a bad author. And I don't have an assistant. So I don't have, like, if I had an assistant, I would have told them 3 months ago hey, take care of this, but I don't.
Yeah.
So
I am so bad about responding to my YouTube email. So I feel you too. I always, like, I'll get in and I'm like, hey, a month later, I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry, I didn't respond to you.
a month is nothing. A month is nothing. Sarah Beth, I just want to say, I am actually so humbled and honored when people say, oh, I'd like a signed book. Because I'm like, wow, right? And there's a part of me that, even though I've been writing a long time, I'm still kind of like, oh my God, I'm writing a book, and people are reading it. I'm still kind of amazed by it. So
there are lots of us here for sure. You did, if you can't say anything, that's fine. But you did mention earlier that you're working on another book now. Can you tell us anything about that?
Well, okay, so I am working on the third Sun Chronicles book, but I'm not literally working on that right now. I'm working on something else that might possibly be related to the Witch Roads, but hasn't been
Ooh.
announced yet.
Okay.
And then when I finish that, I'll go back and finish. The Lady Chaos, the third Sun book, is like half done. And by half done, I mean it's like longer than 5 other books already. I don't know. It's so complicated. But anyway, but it's great. So yeah, then I'll finish that, and then I have something else related to the one I'm working on now.
Interesting.
That I'll go.
You heard it here
but
first,
I can't.
folks.
Yeah, you did hear it here first. I think I did a podcast last week, and I think I mentioned it off the podcast and on recording it. I did the same thing. I might be working on something that hasn't been announced yet, because they're probably waiting to announce it until the books actually come out.
That's fair. That's fair.
Some worlds I'm happy to write like one book or one trilogy in, and then I'm kind of done. Oh, who am I kidding, though? Have I ever done that?
You almost kind of heard it here I love it.
No, it's not true. I guess the High Road trilogy. Like, I don't have any particular desire to go back to that trilogy. And when I was writing it, I did like sketch out a couple of options for books that could be kind of related, adjacent sequels, but I never wrote them because I went on to other stuff. But no, it isn't true. Crown of Stars is 7 books. What came after Crown? Oh my gosh, I can't even remember what I've written. Crown of Stars. Then I wrote the Crossroads trilogy, which of course spawned actually, Crossroads trilogy is Crossroads trilogy is the prologue I was writing to the to the trilogy I intended to write, and it got so big that I turned it into a trilogy, and then Black Wolves is the beginning of the original trilogy. So they're
Oh,
yeah. So, but you could read Black Wolves separately from Crossroads because they take place like decades apart.
I didn't realize they were related actually.
They
But I
they
know
are
you.
very related. Yeah,
Okay,
but they're
I
separate.
still
Black
need to read
Wolves.
this.
That's yeah. Have you read Crossroads? The Crossroads books?
So I I meant to.
You don't have
I
to. I'm just
started. Oh, I'm going to. No, I started the first book, and then it was like one of those times where like my brain just kind of went off a completely different area, and I need to get back to it. Um, but I started the first book for sure, but I'm gonna be eventually get through your entire body of work. I have some catching up to do for sure. So
well. If you're starting now, you've got lots of time. You've got lots of stuff to read. Yeah, I mean, I
yeah.
have to say, I think like many writers, you write something and you do the best job you can at the time, and then later you say, oh, so Spirit Gate has some flaws, some structural flaws. Um, that I won't go into because they're kind of very, very craft built. Although the second two work, I think, super well. I really like the first book. I like how I introduce everything and stuff. There's just a spot in the middle where the way I'm jumping between points of view in the first half is a little rough. Um, I would probably either do it differently now or I would do it better now. I don't
Mm.
know which. Um, but then the second half, then everything gets regularized. So I was, sometime. But the second two books are great. Trader's Gate still probably I Trader's Gate, which is the third book of the Crossroads trilogy, probably is still my favorite ending I've ever written. And
Ooh,
I'm good at endings. And I say that
I agree.
with no false humility because I'm good at endings. Yeah.
I 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
So,
you. Thank you for yeah.
Griffkins caught me out. No, I have a bad habit of collecting all of the books from authors that I like before I get to all of them, and then sometimes being slow. So what you were talking about though, that's why I like to kind of somewhat arbitrarily, but I like to read books in the order that they were published by authors. But it doesn't always work out
Oh.
that way because I actually started
Oh.
Duran, but then I was waiting for my next Crown of Stars book to come in, and then I ended up just having to read all of Crown of Stars. And then you
Mhm.
keep writing new books, the audacity, and then I have to read the new books first. And so I always try to do the new ones because I'm like, I want to, help promote those and everything too. At least because your newer stuff, a lot of it's been shorter with like Servant Mage and the Keeper 6, which also I
Shorter. Oh,
own
well,
the
okay, the
Keeper
two
6.
novellas
I
are
can't
shorter.
find
Yeah.
it. I don't know where it is. I couldn't find my copy when I was setting up, and I have no idea where it is, but it's around
It's
here
hiding
somewhere.
because it's small.
I guess so.
My
Uh,
favorite thing is to see those reviews. So like with the novellas, it was like there was too much world building in in this for the story, and then in the long books it's like there was too much world building in this and it's like which is it, we needed more. Oh no, in the novellas it's like we needed more world building, and in the long ones there's too much world building. It's like, oh my gosh. Make up your
uh,
mind.
I don't know if there's such a thing for me, but that's where it's like always like whatever I talk about the world building and the stuff too. I people who like the kind of stuff that I like, I know they're going to end up liking your stuff. And because it's just if they know my taste and they know why I like it when I talk about
Yeah,
it, but it's also I get that not everybody's world building focused, and some people want different things. And if
absolutely.
you're looking for like the short, fast paced, punchy, full of action stuff, probably not what you're gonna find in a lot of the books here, but it's all there's not all books are for every person, but you find the people who like them. There's just there's a lot of great ones, but
No, it's
uh
absolutely because
oh,
there's
14,
a
right?
lot of super wow. There's a lot of super popular books that I start reading them and I think this isn't for me. And
Yeah.
it has nothing, it's not bad. It's just not for me. And I'm seeing more of that. So even 10 years ago, and Furious Heaven is long. Yeah. It is so it no, look at the print size.
I was gonna
Look at
say
the
this one
print
is
size and the
yeah.
line things. No, it is They crammed a lot, and the paper. Feel the paper. It's
This is thinner one.
my eldest said, "Oh, that's Bible paper. It's really thin, so it compresses." So yeah.
Right there. Never too much world building.
Well,
That was
yeah.
so.
So, but that's the great thing, though. There's something for everybody. Oh, I was going to say, like 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, I feel like say on Goodreads, people were more like, I didn't like this. This is a bad book. And now I'm seeing a lot more, oh, this didn't work for me. But you might like it if you like X. There's like a
Yeah.
shift in how people are talking. They don't feel like they need to say, if I didn't like it, it's bad. They can just say, didn't work for me.
I have picked up many books that I love based off of negative reviews. Because if I see
Yeah.
a review where it's like, this is way too much world building for me. I felt like it was a little too slow getting started. I'm like, okay, yeah. What is this book? Let me see this book.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you a fun anecdote about Alex. 7 of her 8 top 10 books of the year were Crown of Stars for last year. So we did a buddy read. So you got 7 out of like the 10 there. But and just read Keeper 6. Yeah, Keeper 6 was wild. That one was crazy, with just the world building elements too in such a short amount of time. Which is really good. Like literally Sun looking down at us from the
Yeah, we're going to keep coming back to Sun. Sun's like, why aren't you talking about me? I'm gender swapped Alexander the Great.
I know.
Me.
That's the one people like. I'm the one who's I'm the big Crown of Stars fan. I'm like, I really need to get to the sci-fi, but I've been prioritizing the fantasy, and I haven't even gotten to all the fantasy yet. So,
and
there we
it's
go.
a different
Crunchy
vibe.
action.
It's a different vibe. So I'll probably say this in all the interviews I do on my website. Which is just kateelliott.com. On my website, I have my pinned post is called "Where Do I Start with Your Novels?" And then I describe my novels as if they're members of a boy band. And I mean by series, not each novel, but the series. So and then it like explains like, well, so this is the contemplative one, and this is the impulsive one, or what. So to try to help people understand that the different novels kind of each have a different vibe or a tone, and they're not the same. So someone can love Crown of Stars. This happens to me all the time. Someone will say, oh, I really love Crown of Stars, but I don't know, but Spirit Walker, I didn't care for that. And someone else is like, oh my gosh, Spirit Walker is like my favorite trilogy ever, but I couldn't get into Crown of Stars, or whatever, right? Whatever, mix and match, right? So it's just there's just the vibe is so different in the different books.
And you with the wide variety that's going to happen here too. But
yeah.
I say Grifton reminded me of the time. So I will really quick just mention, because I know you said in the newsletter that you have the rights now to the unpublished books 2 and 3. So we could get more. I know that's one I've been waiting to with there. So we could definitely get more of those.
It's possible. I can't. The complicated issue with books 2 and 3 now is that because book 1 exists, and because it wasn't a bestseller, no big 5 publisher is going to pick up books 2 and 3. It's just not going to happen, because that is very much a trilogy. That's a whole, a story in 3 volumes. So I have to figure out how to be making money that leaves me enough time to write it, because I have like a third or more of the second book written. It's written, and I know what happens in the whole trilogy. So we'll see. But I really, it's kind of like that Crossroads. The Crossroads universe is my most, I would say, my most unique universe of all the ones I've done. It's the one I most tried to create, not out of whole cloth, but that I wasn't caught. The Spirit Walker books are very much early 19th century Earth, only it's an alternate Earth and there's magic. Obviously, Crown of Stars is an alternate version of, very inspired by 10th century Germany, and Court of Fives is, as we all know, Little Women meet American Ninja Warrior in a setting inspired by Cleopatra's Egypt. That's a young adult trilogy. So a lot of these, and even Witch Roads is clearly influenced by me watching a lot of Chinese historical dramas. So, but Crossroads doesn't have any of that. It's like purely me saying, I'm going to create a world out of whole cloth. And this is something I don't mention much, if ever, but the earliest real map I ever drew, so from like 16, from high school, that's the
Oh,
basis. That's the basis of it.
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so that map I held on to. I wrote a whole novel set in that thing that I trashed because it's terrible. And but I picked like three things. I kept the map. I kept the cloaked riders with the winged horses, and I think one other thing I can't remember, but yeah, and then everything else is just like boom, I set down in there.
All right. Well, I know we're at time. So the final thing, I realized I missed this from earlier too, but do you have a book or an author that you would recommend that everybody check out?
Oh, you should have
We'll
warned me
end
you were
there.
going to. You should have warned me you were going to say this.
I'm so
So
sorry.
it's okay. It's okay. So I used to say, if you'd asked me 6 years ago or 5 years ago, I would have said, oh, you should read Martha Wells. But now everybody's reading Martha Wells, so I don't have to do that anymore. At least I hope everybody's reading Martha Wells, because she really hit it big. And her other roads, the Murderbot series is great. If you're not watching the Apple TV show, it's great. I love Murderbot. My favorites of hers are the Cloud Road series and the Fall of Ilrin trilogy, which starts with the Wizard Hunters. But let me think of someone. I need to think of someone who's a little more obscure. Oh, I hate this question. Let me say Elliott de Badard, who's a French Vietnamese writer. And she has written, among other things, a number of stories set in a kind of a far future setting in which it was the Vietnamese imperial expansionist force has expanded out into the galaxy. So she's written a bunch of different short stories and novels set in this setting, and they're all standalone. But the background of them is the stories are great because she's an excellent writer. And the background is so interesting because it's based on different cultural expectations than the more commonplace, American or British kind of view of what the future might look like. So I love that about them.
Okay. You might have to put that in the chat, and I'll put it in because I do not know how to spell that name.
I will do it right now.
We do have a J.V. Jones rec also on my shelf, but I've not yet read. But I have a lot of
I haven't read. I
so.
met her once, but I have not read anything by her. So, but she's
Oh,
I'm really glad to see that she's almost.
Nana Tyranna's got us here.
Okay. I'm happy to see anybody finishing up a long-awaited series. Yeah, it's a hard business, honestly.
Oh,
did you say you had Did you say you had a lightning round of questions? Or was it just that one?
Okay.
We can do it.
Well, because the other fun thing is I know that you're big on chapter titles, which is also something I always defend. So I was just gonna if you have a quick state your case on why you love chapter titles, because I'm also a fan.
So sometimes the best thing to do is just have numbered chapters, but sometimes the chapter titles can either give you more information, or they can emphasize a line. Like in the Witch Roads, all the chapter titles are phrases from the chapter. So it's something in the chapter that either I liked the phrase a lot, or it emphasizes something that I think it's important in that chapter, particularly important in that chapter, whether it might be an event or something people see, or a tone, emotional tone, whatever. So that's why I chose those. And then, of course, the chapter titles in the Sun books are wildly variable, but some of them are really funny. And I think chapter titles can kind of lure you in, or they can give you a hint about what's going to happen, or they can make you laugh, or they can be like those old 18th century titles where like the chapter title is like 20 words long, you know, in which the old lawyer, you know, Digby Esquire discovers that his granddaughter has run off with an unexceptional and truly inappropriate man, right? So I don't know. Why wouldn't you want to put those in? But that doesn't mean you can't also just have 1, 2, 3. But why
Very fair,
not?
very
Why
fair.
not? Why not? Chapter titles are fun and you
I'm
can
a
do
big
a
fan.
lot
Yeah.
with them if you're creative with them. Yeah.
Okay. So I will just do one final one, which maybe it'll be an easier one. But we have talked about, you have such a wide variety of styles and different feels and vibes with your different books, genres. Is there anything you've not written that you would like to someday, like genre wise or like style wise?
I will probably never write a graphic novel, but it is interesting. But I probably won't ever write one because I don't read them that much. But in science fiction fantasy, sometimes I think about writing a straight up mystery, although the novel I'm writing right now has a mystery element and it's really rough. It's hard. I would like to, once again, since I only really did it with Court of Fives, I would like to write a complete novel in under 100,000 words.
Hmm. I don't,
That
that might
that
be a
seems
bit of
to,
a challenge for you.
thank you. Thank you. That's what everybody says. I could do it. I just know it. I just have to believe.
Thankfully, I like long books, so it's never a complaint for me. But oh man, I mean, you can just be like Tad and write like a 4 to 5 book trilogy, and call it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of did. I kind of did with Crown of Stars.
Yeah, the 2 trilogies. I have for the first editions my set, so there's the note on like, okay, this is definitely the last book coming up here, and like it's always fun reading those in there. So. Oh my goodness. But well, I don't you've been so generous with your time. I don't want to take up more. This has just flown by. But thank you so much again for joining. Everybody go read some Kate Elliott books. Check out The Witch Roads. I should have a link in the description where you can order it, pre-order it as well. So it's coming out here very soon on June 10th, in Nameless Land, and November as well. It's really good. I think if you like Elliott, you're gonna have a really good time with it. So it's really fun, and it's a good introduction one because it's only 2 books and it'll be done this year, so you can try it as a
Yeah.
first too.
It is a good introduction. It is only 2 books. They're a little short by my standards. And it is a complete story. And by the way, after you've read The Witch Roads, go look very carefully at the cover to The Nameless Land. Not before, just after
Ooh.
you've read The Witch Roads. Go look carefully at all of it. It took me 3 times to see it.
Okay, well, that's
Yeah.
definitely something I'm gonna go look
Yeah,
immediately
go do it right now. Yeah, yeah,
because I'm very curious.
yeah,
But thanks
yeah.
again. Thanks to everybody in the
Thank
chat.
you.
We had a really great crowd here today, and yeah, hopefully we'll talk again sometime.
Well, thank you so much, and say hello to Des Moines from me.
I definitely will.
My old haunt, so to speak.